Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. Today I'm going to guide you through the proper usage and care of your Omega Seamaster 300 Master coaxial. This is a timepiece that is automatic winding by case-back winding rotor. Nevertheless, should it run down or should you wish to energize the timepiece manually, you can do so by taking the crown and threading it out counterclockwise till you feel it distinctly pop out of its threaded water-resistant sleeve. At this point, turn the crown 30 to 40 turns to start the movement. This will be sufficient to start the beat of the timepiece, and you'll see the seconds hand advancing. If you wish to wind the watch all the way up to its maximum rated power reserve of 60 hours, simply continue turning the crown. 80 to 100 turns will be sufficient to fully energize the watch, and you cannot accidentally overwind this timepiece as there is a bridle style mainspring that slips to relieve excess tension. You can, however, listen for the click or tick from inside the watch that represents the slipping of the mainspring. If you don't want to count to 80 to 100, you can simply listen for that click as the sign that your watch is fully energized. There are two subsidiary time setting modes for precisely setting time on your watch. We're going to talk about the first, which is hacking or stop seconds. You pull the crown to its second detent, and this is best done when the seconds hand is at the index at 12, and what you want to do is stop the seconds hand at the index at 12, then find a reliable reference time such as an online atomic clock set to your time zone, and you want to set, for example, let's talk about setting the watch to 11:15. I'm actually going to set the hour, but I want to set to the next nearest minute compared to my reference. So I'm going to set to 11:15. If it's currently 11:14, I'm going to wait for the reference time to catch up to the exact hour, minute, and second that I've set. At most, you're only going to be 60 seconds ahead. And when they perfectly coincide, I'm going to push that crown back in 2 stops, and now I've synchronized my watch to a reference time. There is an intermediate setting position between winding and stop seconds, and in this position, I can jump the hour hand of my watch independently. You'll note how the seconds hand continues to advance, the minute hand likewise continues to keep time, and I can jump through time zones in either direction, and there will be no hazard to the watch's precision. This is a convenient feature for frequent travelers. Always screw the crown back in to a stop firmly when you're done setting or winding your watch. This protects the watch against both abrasion and water intrusion. Let's talk briefly about the use of the bezel. This is a dive-style bezel, and thus unidirectional. It turns only in one direction by ratcheting means. The idea is that you cannot accidentally extend a dive, only shorten it by accident should the bezel be displaced. Line up the luminescent pearl insert with the minute hand. You can also line it up with the hour hand, but minutes is more conventional. And now you can easily read the elapsed time against the radial scale. This is quite convenient, and it proves you don't need a chronograph to keep time precisely during specific intervals when using your watch. This is very good for billable hours in professions that involve that kind of timekeeping. I should also mention that there is a Ceragold insert. So this is a combination of ceramic and co-molded gold. The two will always remain one piece. They can never separate. It is a highly scratch-resistant material, just like the sapphire of the crystal. So the timepiece has the same scratch-resistant properties about its bezel insert that it does on its sapphire. There are also some handling restrictions. You don't want to strike the crystal extremely hard against a firm, sharp, or hardened surface, and you don't want to do that with your bezel either. At the limit, there could be fracture or shattering risks, but for the most part, if you've never shattered, chipped, or cracked a crystal, you're never going to put a mark in this Ceragold bezel insert. Just keep in mind it has the same properties as sapphire itself. It's important to note that there are 2 hazards your watch will face. Magnetism is no longer one of the primary hazards, as Omega's advances in silicon hairspring technology have rendered the timepieces effectively amagnetic. Water and shock are the major concerns. First, let's talk about water. Water resistance is not a static feature of your watch. Over time, as seals age and lubricants degrade, your watch will be relatively less water resistant than when it left the factory. Therefore, Omega advises on an annual basis, typically before the start of the swimming season, having the watch checked at an authorized service center of Omega with a dry test to ensure that factory-rated water resistance is still intact. This is also a good time to have total condition, functional, aesthetic, and water resistance checked by your Omega authorized dealer and service center. It's also important to note that though this watch is water resistant to 300 meters, which is sufficient for diving, Leather, as seen on the strap, is a porous natural material that is never water resistant. Therefore, the watch should always be swapped to a full bracelet or a water-resistant Omega band such as textile or rubber prior to water exposure. Ultimately, you can help to avoid accidental drowning. Always keep the crown of your watch threaded in completely, and neither wind nor set the watch, not just while it's submerged, but even when the watch itself remains wet when there's water on the case. Intrusion of water into the case can cause catastrophic and expensive cosmetic and mechanical damage. It's also important to remember that shock resistance is an inherent feature of your watch. The timepiece meets all Swiss and ISO standards for a shock-resistant watch. However, at the extremes of concussion, damage can still be rendered on a fine mechanical timepiece. So for extreme concussive activities, such as batting, tennis, golf, firearms marksmanship, or the riding of ATVs or mountain bikes, it's important to discontinue the use of the watch first. It's also important to remember that every fine mechanical timepiece requires a periodic comprehensive overhaul. It's always best to have the watch checked annually during your water test. Should service be necessary, per Omega, 4 to 5 years is the typical service interval. Perform exclusively at an authorized service center of Omega or with the factory itself, as these agencies solely have access to the trained personnel, specialized tools, and original factory replacement parts to preserve the value of your watch as both instrument and as investment. Moreover, only these agencies are able to back all labor and parts invested in your watch with an Omega factory service warranty. Visit our website at govbergwatches.com and call, text, or email our experts who will be happy to walk you through every phase of the usage and the care of this or any Omega fine timepiece.